Brock basically said, new talent cannot get over with the crowd. That's what he said on the Pat McAfee show. And here's a quote from him saying, quote, I'm looking at these young kids, and I don't know. Somebody needs to step up over there. Somebody needs to get over, figure out how to put asses in the seats. He went on to say, not worry about, their high spot, but figure out how the hell they can be different. Like, how the hell can they make money? That's it. This is a business. He would finish up by saying, the young generation thinks they can go out, do a certain move, and do it over and over, but that's not the business. There's a good guy, there's a bad guy, pitting people against each other, and a storyline. And while I usually am not one for, the older person being like, the kids today, these generation, here's what I'll say, and I'll let you go first, but I do want to clear one point first. I think before we get into this, and I know a lot of people have already made up their minds about what they think about Brock's comments, I think Brock in this instance can be right and wrong at the same time.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what I think about it, but I want to hear what you think. What do you think about Brock Lesnar basically shooting on WWE superstars, modern day WWE superstars?
That's kind of what I was going to say. Honestly, that's part of what I was going to say. Like, I think in this particular situation, and I know how people take Brock's comments and a lot of Brock's comments, and I know how they're probably going to take this one, but there is some truth to what he said. There is some wrong to what he said, but there's also some truth to it too. Like with today's wrestling, right? Like you see a lot of these guys, they get in the ring and they'll, especially in the indies, they'll either look for that one great spot or they'll look for that one great move. Like back in the day, they wanted that entire match to be on point. That entire match needed to flow. Like from the first Irish whip to the last step you take out the ring. It had to be perfect. Nowadays, these wrestlers are just looking for that one big spot. And I think to solidify yourself as a good talent and to keep yourself around a little longer, I think you need to look beyond that. So with that, I do agree with him. I also agree with the money comment. I agree with a lot of his comments, but I also can see where it comes off is a big is a not big, but is a what's the word I'm looking for? Is a bit of a like I guess like a douchebag type comment or assholish move. Because again, like you said, Omar, I'm not one. I used to hate when my father used to say, "Back in my day, we did this." I used to hate it, but it's and I feel like it's kind of unfair too because right now I think it's a different landscape for wrestling. Newer wrestlers have a different landscape, different hurdles to get over that older wrestlers didn't have to go through. They didn't have to do some of the things that the older wrestlers have to do, and I think that's a little unfair to make that comment.
And there's okay. I want to be clear about this because it is very easy for me as someone who is younger to be disillusioned with what Brock Lesnar said, but there are certain aspects of his argument that I think do ring true. I do think that maybe some people, especially younger people, and I know I'm a young dude, it's easy to get lost in the idea of I'm on TV, I just want to do cool stuff to get over or see if I can get over. That's cool in the moment, but what's the long-term impact of that? And I think that's like an important thing that Brock Lesnar was trying to get to that, maybe he didn't articulate in the right way. But I do think that people need to understand at the end of the day, this is a business and you need to do what's best for you. And that's what wrestling is. And I think he also got that part right. Wrestling is simple. It's good guy, bad guy, storyline. Simple, effective, it works. A time-honored tradition, a very easy story to tell. And I think that does get lost on a lot of fans. That gets lost on a lot of wrestlers as well. And I think that's a little bit of the veteran advice coming out. Now, where I think Brock Lesnar is kind of full of shit is where okay, here's the thing. When Brock says, these young guys got to step it up and they're not getting over and they're not doing this, that for me is like the typical Vince argument. Remember when Vince a few years ago was on Stone Cold
Yep.
podcast, right? Saying like, "Oh, I don't know what's all wrong with Cesaro. He can't get over. Maybe it's his accent." You know, it's like the typical, "Oh, no one stepped up. No one stepped up." When you're when you're in an environment in WWE and sometimes even AEW, where your creativity might be stifled, it is more so WWE, but it is so hard to get over. In WWE, we know it. There's some talent you look at him, you're like, this person is great. They're amazing. Kofi Kingston, great wrestler, great storyteller, really good promo. He's never gonna get over to the level of a prime time main eventer in WWE because of the creative. You can only go so far. And even Kofi, it took him like what 15 years in the
Yep.
in as Booker T would say, in this business. It took him 15 years. And he barely got there. Barely got there. So it's easier said
You
than
mentioned
done.
Cesaro earlier too.
Yeah. Cesaro had the biggest match of his life, and it was a Universal title match at like Vengeance or some crap like that, right? It wasn't even like a big pay-per-view. So I think in that note, Brock is kind of just full of crap. This is also a guy who is allowed to break all of the rules that no one else has, or that everyone else has to follow. This guy can go off script on his promos. This guy
Yep.
has creative input on what he does. This guy can say no and not be worried about his job. This guy can say no and get paid $1 million a match. This guy can juice. He literally juiced. And got away with it.
Yep.
Went to wrestle in the UFC. He juiced, got away with it, juiced some more, went to wrestle in the UFC, juiced some more, and then like main event to SummerSlam. I mean, it is like it got paid $1 million for it because he is so above everyone, and I think maybe Brock doesn't realize that genuinely, but that he's full of crap when he says stuff like that from the position he's in because. He can't be, and it's a similar thing. Remember when Undertaker, right, was on Rogan's podcast a few years ago, and he was saying like, "Oh, back in my day, we'd be drinking beer and doing drugs till 3 a.m." Okay, that was like Joe Swanson from Texas. I don't know. Okay, that wasn't
It
the
was.
Undertaker.
Yeah, it was.
Bader, we're hog tying people, Bader.
Bader.
But my point was standing. But it reminds me of that, in a little bit. That's not to say that he doesn't have a point, but I do see kind of like it's a mixed bag for me.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, and that's part of what I was saying as well. And I think we together touched on exactly what was, what he said. But like, yeah, I think I think some of it was good, some of it was bad. But and you touched on an interesting point. Like he could literally do whatever he wants. He's one of the few wrestlers I've ever seen in my life that actually could pick which pay-per-view he shows up at. Like I've never in the history of wrestling champions, I've never seen a champion defend his belt like once or twice a year. I've never seen that before in my life.
Trevor, he can take steroids. That's my biggest thing about Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, he took steroids and was still
steroids, and it's okay. WWE literally said, "Yeah, he's a Brock. What are you gonna do?
Brock, what do you got?
What are you gonna do?" Hey everyone, we hope you liked this video. If you did, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Until next time, keep it real.